Welcome everyone to Weekend Escapades. Today we are taking a look at our top 5 abandoned locations. Some of these live in ghost towns and some of these we just found roadside. But these are the ones we found most interesting, and some of these have an amazing backstory. Come along with us and share the adventure. Number 1. Schoolhouse, WIDTSOE, Utah. This schoolhouse is an amazing building. But really what is left is what once was a very active schoolhouse for the children in the area and a very common meeting place for the locals. This town was settled in the 1900s by dry farmer Jedediah Adair. He had such great success with his dry farming techniques that it attracted many settlers to the area, but that was fairly short-lived. During our visit to this location, we found this building amazing. As in the wind, you can hear it creaking and settling. And to look through the roof and see the light coming through, this building, I would have to say, is one of our top picks of abandoned locations. With the beautiful color of the wood on the exterior of this location and its haunted appearance on the inside, this building really stands out in WIDTSOE. And again, I would have to say, this is our top pick for amazing buildings in abandoned locations. Number 2. Abandoned Mansion, Babylon Ghost Town, Leeds, Utah. This mansion has been built up twice. John Vaught, an up-and-coming senator in Utah, tried to build this house the first time. In the passing of his wife, he hesitated, and then it burnt down. He tried the building again, and it burnt down a second time. This land was habited by the Paiute and also the Anasazi tribes. They say that this land was possessed and that possession and the hauntings of this area would not allow this house to be built. There's a mining company that used to exist right there in those rocks that were built right next to this home, and it is located right next to the Virgin River. This location of Babylon had around 40 to 50 people that mined the area, and they left due to the fact that they could not get supplies into the town. So as beautiful as Babylon is, they say that the spirits of the local Native American tribes that used to be here will not allow this home to be completed. So it sits here in the middle of the desert, abandoned and rotting in the sun. Many of the locals come visit this at night and say it is also extremely haunted. Now, whether these stories are fact or fiction, we love this location in this abandoned mansion, and that's why we had to include it in our top 5 abandoned locations. Number 3, Abandoned Home, WIDTSOE, Utah, Ghost Town. So dry land farming didn't work out in WIDTSOE, but the dry climate, the dry cold winters, and the dry summers made some beautiful buildings. The way it preserved the wood and brought out the amazing skeletons of these old buildings is amazing. Just take a look at the walls in this building. You can see the wind was blowing pretty hard, and it just rocked these walls and vibrated this building when I was standing inside. This is probably the scariest building I've stood in, worried about the walls coming down around me. But I was overtaken by the beauty inside these buildings, as they're kind of an old ghost town feel, but at the same time, you couldn't find a man-made haunted house that looked better than this real haunted house that lives here in WIDTSOE. Number 4, Riverside Cabins, Bunkerville, Nevada. Now, these cabins are located roadside, right off the Highway 170, or Route 170. And I'd have to say that out of all the locations we've looked at, this one here is probably the scariest one to poke your head in, as a couple of these had bedrolls and some cans of food that looked like maybe people had still been living around in these old buildings. And maybe that's true. But I'll tell you, it's awfully hot out here in the middle of the desert, and I can't imagine anyone staying inside these old buildings. But also, these old abandoned locations we go to, you never know when you might find just a few ghosts hanging out in these locations. But what an eerie feeling you get from these old locations, because as we're walking around, you really get the feeling that somebody's watching you. So that's why we claim this to be one of our top 5 locations, abandoned locations, with kind of the eeriest feeling we've had at any location that we've been to. And I would definitely not come here at night. A lot of the locals do some side-by-side and they're off-roading, and they have bonfires here at night, and they camp here. And you can see that by looking at some of these buildings as a fire is broken out and taking a couple of these down. It's a shame how much graffiti and damage is done to this area, because it would be really interesting to see this in its heyday. I could not find any original pictures, but you can imagine how beautiful this might have been. But now overgrown, burnt down, and abandoned, this location is one of our top 5 abandoned locations. Number 5, Farm Home, Hamblin Valley Road, located by State Line Ghost Town. This old house is located roadside on Hamblin Road, about 10 miles away from State Line Ghost Town. State Line Ghost Town is located right on the Nevada and Utah border. And this house was very eerie. As you walk inside that front door, you put your feet on the floor, and it's really cushy, and you start to sink, and the tin roof was rattling, and all the wood was shaking. Because on a windy day, it definitely gives you a haunted feeling. But the look on the outside of this location, well, speaks for itself. And as you go in the side door, you look inside the building, there were a couple of bed rolls and some bottles laying on the floor that made me think that people had still been bunking down in here fairly recently. And then you gotta watch it, because you imagine that somebody might still be around the property calling this their residence, and you don't want that kind of problem in what feels like part of an old ghost town, but definitely an abandoned building roadside here on Hamblin Road. All of these locations exist in videos that we've done on ghost towns and roadside oddities. We'd like to thank you for joining us on this adventure. We are now on Patreon. If you'd like to support our channel, click on the link below and take a look. And until our next adventure, goodbye from Weekend Escapades, and we'll see you in the next one.